Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are back again, streaming on the YouTubes. Hoping some of you folks come in from out there, in from the cold. Tonight we're going to talk with my brother from another mother, Tyler Wentland. We're going to talk about world building. We're going to talk about Red Koi. We're going to talk about Samurex, but we're mostly just going to have some fun. So bringing him in. What's going on, Tyler? How are you?
Pretty well. How are you?
Busy.
Busy-ish.
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 Yeah.
That's a nice way of saying
Yeah.
flat out crazy.
I mean, I nap 18 hours a day, but the rest of the time's really busy.
Really condensed. Good.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
struck a good balance.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Sweet. So what's going on with you? What's you know what? Why don't you just give us a quick, give us a tour of what you're working on. Give us a tour of Red Koi and
Sure.
what
Yeah.
it's come to be, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, artist, writer, Red Koi, um, which is has been coming out through Alterna Comics, and have we're about to put out the seventh issue, which will be the last issue that's actually published specifically through Alterna. But the title is going to continue as an Alterna affiliate, so always going to be connected with the Alterna community. It's a dark fantasy samurai comic. With obviously a lot of historical influences from all of our favorite warrior cultures, knights and Vikings and samurai, and pepper in a bunch of supernatural stuff on that. So that's been a lot of fun. And what I'm working on now is actually plotting out the remainder of the story that I'm going to eventually crowdfund myself to kind of wrap it up. So that's the thing that I'm doing right now. I don't know about you, but thumbnailing is not my favorite part of the comic experience.
Yeah, I need on the next issue of Samurex, I need to be better about it.
Yeah.
I do a lot of it on the page by like drawing and sketching stuff. Sometimes, even drawing a lot, but because I work digitally, like I'm just like
Moving stuff around.
doing this until I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I need to, I don't know. I think I need to put more into that stage for
Well, it's
sure in the
worth it. I
future.
think it's worth it. And what I'm trying to do, because it's been such a great time, coming out as part of the regular Alterna crew. Um, but obviously, I need to now. I've got some time to kind of think about how I want to finish things out, and so I really want to make the the pages as intentional as possible. So I'm trying to be disciplined because I've got the time. I can take have a little patience with myself, and it is still I'm still not patient with myself. I thought I'd be like, okay, there's a little more breathing room. I can kind of plot out slowly, and it's still, man. Sometimes these things just are really difficult, and then I know on the page I'm gonna end up editing something. I don't like that, or changing something, or I wrote out a fight scene. I plotted out the fight scene, but when I'm actually at the page, I'm like, no, she should do X, Y, and Z moves instead. So um, there's something to that, I think. But hopefully, we'll stay disciplined, focused, get it. What I'm trying to do is plot out the entire rest of the story, and then get to work. Making the art and getting that wrapped up. But Pete and I are gonna do a stream, kind of going into more of the details about that next month.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool, cool. So it looks like we got my man Ben Soto in the chat. Ben
Nice.
is is my colorist from another motherist or something.
Some reason the
What's going
chat's
on,
been
Ben? I love you, buddy. Ben, I don't know if I knew and I forgot. Like I don't know. Just today, for some reason, I realized that you colored that fourth issue of Can't Kill Cade, and you did a marvelous job, my friend. Picking that up, picking up the color palette, the wonky, crazy pastel color palette that I was using. You picked that up and you killed it, bud. So
I think
kudos.
the time I was on Ben's stream with his brother. I finished half a picture, and the both of them ended up just crushing some crazy awesome like inked piece. I was like, I'm sort of embarrassed that I tried in this time here.
Oh yes, no, we're so disappointed in you, Tyler.
Should be,
Yeah,
but
you just
no,
don't
that's
ever live
great.
up to expectations. You're crazy.
No.
Yeah, and then we got Fabrizio Aiello in the chat as well. What's going on, man? Thanks for coming by. I was watching him do some inking the other night, which also made me personally feel pathetic.
He can sling a
So,
brush. He can
he-
sling a brush.
yeah, like a magic wand.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming by, man. So yeah, so what's this look like then? So the structure of how we've been kind of doing Red Koi's changing a little bit then. So
Mhm.
how's that look for how you continue to evolve your story? I said we're going to talk world building. So
I
what do you
guess we could
think
talk about
as far as what you've set in place thus far to what's going forward?
Yeah, yeah. There were so what I did was, I went through my issues because I set up a lot. There's been a lot of setup, and then thinking about how it's gonna wrap, I basically just I wrote out every character who needed to have a loose end, tied nicely, and kind of did a light overview of how it was going to finish. And I ended up, I mean, in my opinion, I ended up tying it all up pretty well. And it's just funny because a lot of times we think like everything that we do is so intentional, and you don't realize how many, little kind of breadcrumbs you set for yourself along the way. Maybe that's a bad metaphor, but how many things you set up
Yeah,
that then can come full circle later on. Like, you don't know why you might have had a character say this particular thing or why they ended up in that particular place. But then when you're going to kind of finish the story, that particular thing or that particular place becomes a really important moment. And I just kept finding that, as I was trying to finish the story, figure out, well, what happens to this guy or Kairu, the little frog guy, disappeared in issue 2. Did he die or did he not? I don't know. He didn't. Something else
nice.
happened, we're gonna figure it out. But it's cool because those characters have a role in how the story kind of comes about. So that was one part of it. But then, and this is kind of where I'm gonna throw it back to you. A big thing for me about world building is also thinking like, what kind of world do I want to play in? And with Samurex, like, you're definitely playing in something specific. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff happening there. So like, what's gone into the whole like what's the world of Samurex?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, and that's really been what's taken me as long as it has to get to this point. I had a really hard time deciding like, okay, I'm making a thing, but what do I want to make? Like, what do I want to draw?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like so. I, I I kind of figured out that I want to make something that, and it's sort of via chat. I was talking with Fabrizio about this the other night, but like the colors have a brand to them. Like there's a color scheme that goes through the whole book, and like I just wanted to draw this, dark, you know, but like I don't necessarily gravitate towards drawing machines and stuff,
Hmm.
but drawing machines in an organic way, if that makes sense,
Yeah, sure.
is a lot of fun. And like, it's just there's an excessive amount of wires.
Of course.
There's
Why
going to
wouldn't
be.
you?
I don't know why, but like,
What are you supposed to
I'm,
do in that situation?
yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So for me, it was just evolving this idea, um, just kind of starting to envision this universe because it started out like, is Samarex just a guy on a planet?
Hmm.
Then was the whole planet, a city? And then at some point, like I had different ideas um come together. Some of the ideas that I was messing around with Curse of These Bones, actually,
Hmm.
all of this stuff kind of collided together, and I started to envision this universe, and I compare it to Star Wars a lot, although I don't know how it's the best I can do. It's not a Star Trek universe, if you know what I
Mm.
mean. I mean, and it's definitely not high science. It's action, it's adventure, it's ridiculous robots and aliens, and like, I mean, that's really what inspires me. Like, just this weird world, like the Mos Eisley Cantina,
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? That is a comic book, but I mean, I've been inspired by a lot of stuff, including um, Frank Miller's Ronin,
Hmm.
and I pull this one book out all the time, but Outland. What is it? What is it? Where are you? It's Outlanders. Outlanders. What is it? Anyway, um, just a watercolor space, like graphic novel, but it's magazine size with art by Alex Nino from
Cool.
like, and the book's from like, I don't know, the late '80s. Like, he was a guy that drew a lot of stuff in heavy metal in
Oh,
like the '70s and '80s. Um,
so
but
in the book, does it take place primarily in this urban city kind of landscape for book one?
So this, yeah, book one is like all in that, like what you see, like in that kind of like urban, and
Hmm.
then just like this decayed um industrial interior is pretty much where the whole story takes place. And I knew
Cool.
I wanted to create a story that had like an ending to it.
Mm.
Um, and not to take pot shots at anybody, but I've gotten books. I mean, even recently, the past couple of years, that I love them, but I didn't love that they ended on a cliffhanger for the story. Like, there wasn't a
Right.
resolution
I get that.
to that arc.
Yeah.
Especially when, I mean, it's hard. Like, it takes a long time to put these books together. You know what I mean? Like, you know the time and effort it takes to make these books, and
Yeah.
so anything can happen, and there not be another one.
Hmm.
And so for me, I wanted to make sure that every time I put something out, at least for the first thing, that it was going to be a finished thing,
Full
you know.
story. Yeah.
Um. So hey, I brought in Rex the Bean, my man
What's
Rex,
up?
my the man with the sultry voice. Rex is Tyler. Obviously, you know who he is. I explained
Yep.
who you are a little bit.
How's it going, man?
One.
For
I'm good. How
anyone,
are you?
for anyone
Good.
tuning in, Rex is my intellectual counterpart. I'm artsy fartsy, and he's smartsy smartsy. So
That's very kind.
That is
yeah,
nice.
so we're gonna be doing some NFT kinds of things, some techie type stuff that he is masterminding, and it's gonna be fun going into 2024.
So
Cool.
before we get off the art part, I feel like so every time we do a stream where we talk about like the feel of Samurex, I keep coming back to Blade Runner. I feel like that's a really good fit. And obviously Blade Runner, like even the robots were like perfectly humaniform to the point where they were indistinguishable, but like there's something about that world that's like it's dystopian but it's neon, and like
Mm,
that it's man it's got that Blade Runner feel.
you're right. It's the neon thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's on point. I mean, that's unquestionably an influence of the book. Um, and yeah, forgot what I was going to say, but um, yeah, it started out that way, and expanded when I got thinking about where I wanted to go with it in this universe that you're talking about a society as a universe almost, or as a galaxy, um where you have these original like 12 core worlds,
Mm.
and like they all became spacefaring at once, and they joined together into one union, and then populated and discovered more worlds, but that was like 1,000 years ago. So, and Rex and I have talked about this too. Yeah, like you've got that Blade Runner-esque feeling in the beginning of the Samurex book. But like it's like city on top of city on top of city for
Yeah.
1,000 years, falling apart upon itself.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's just
yeah, that's the beauty of it, is you've got decay, and with that decay can come so many different stories.
Well, it's like when you walk through, part of a city, and you can tell where there was where the old buildings were because the architecture is better.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it just stands out, like, and it draws your eye to it, and you're just like, what was that? Or like you see something that's now like some a Wells Fargo or something, but it has that old, like, beautifully, like, engraved name of like some businesses. That you're like, oh my
Hotels.
gosh, what was
Hotels are
happening?
classic for that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you walk into a hotel and you're like, this is a Hilton, but it was built in, 1907. What
Mhm.
was this?
Yeah.
And it's got a great story.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely a part of it for me. And
So Blade
the
Runner
fun
meets
of
Futurama. Is that
what's
what
that?
Blade Runner meets Futurama? I
Sure.
remember they went
Yes.
underground to a city or something there. Okay, that fell flat. Never mind. Just
Man, I don't watch much TV anymore. Like I've watched Futurama, but it was literally like 20 years ago.
Yeah, me
Ridiculous.
too, man. You don't remember?
Ridiculous.
Anyway.
But yeah, I keep saying the Samurex is like, if Batman and the Mandalorian had a RoboCop baby, like that's Samurex.
I'd read that book.
Yeah.
I plan
I mean,
to.
who wouldn't? Just for, I don't really love you.
So you want me to talk for a sec about the NFT stuff, Nick?
Sure, real quick.
Yeah, I'll cover
I
it
know
real
that
quick.
was early for you, but you can handle it.
I won't go into. There's a lot of detail that I could go into that I won't, unless asked the question. But so what we're talking about here, and Nick and I have been talking about this for a long time, in terms of like the indie comic space in general, and in the the art space. And my background is in blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs, and really, like, I see those as more of a way to like manage intellectual property probably than anything else, or at least in this case. And so the question becomes, like, how can we take this technology that helps manage intellectual property really well and use it on an art project that's really cool? And so we're starting to explore that with issue 1. And so folks that are buying into the Indiegogo, I think anything above the $20 or $25 level, one of the things that they're going to get is a token. And you could call it a token, you could call it an NFT, a non-fungible token, whatever you want. But the important thing there is it'll prove that someone bought issue 1 in a way that's a lot better than a receipt, or some type of like handmade certificate of authenticity, or an email that could be forged. Like, this is a pretty solid way to say, hey, this person definitely owns issue 1. And then there are cool things that come along with that. And the first thing is there's going to be a warranty copy available. So if you become a hardcore Samurex fan and you get the first issue and you can't help but pull it open and you get your fingerprints all over it and let your dog chew on it because it tastes good, but you want to have a good copy to put in plastic and to hermetically seal, or whatever, you're going to have the ability to get that second copy using that NFT. And then from there, the sky's kind of the limit.
Yeah, I mean, so, and to put it a little plainer, I mean, so that digital token, like you're gonna get a digital copy of the comic, and traditionally it's done like you just email people a PDF, but like there's no real, once you send that, it's like even if you password protect it, it doesn't really mean much, and in a way, it's like what'd you pay for, and where's the value there on both ends, whether you're buying it or whether you're creating it. And so with this, you're going to have something that you can record and be like, I own a digital copy of this. And it's something theoretically you could sell again, because we're going to keep building up. We're going to keep building the community. We're going to keep building the universe. And there's going to be a lot more stuff that comes out of that. And your ticket into a lot of those areas and elements of that universe is going to be via that ownership of the book as an NFT that's, you know, recordable and verifiable.
Cool.
Well put. That's, I mean,
like, cool. I'm the brain's spinning. Maybe, I don't know. Tyler's smarter than me anyway, but yeah. So I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand really well with what Samurex is anyway. You know, with all of the techie McTech futuristic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got some really fun things planned with regards to that. Something I wanted though to ask, I wanted to talk about. I mean, your inspirations for where you set your stories. Where does that stuff come out of? I mean, I know it comes out of things you read, stuff like that. Right now, like I'm already thinking the second issue, like I've just got this vision of like this snow in trees, but like when you cut the trees inside they're red like blood, and so they bleed like blood, and just this
What's going to
fight
be
scene.
great coloring, great image. Just
So it's gonna be super fun to color,
red
yeah.
blood against white snow. That's amazing.
But I mean, you have scores of cool stuff like that you've created.
Yeah,
the temples and the.
I think in the same way. I just think about what I want to draw. You know, where I want the character to be. So, like in the first chapter, I wanted a haunted house kind of creature feature movie. You know, kind of thing, and also containing it to just one house made it just easier for my brain to kind of not go so far, because like I mean what you shared before, you know, you're setting up a world that has had like, what'd you say, like thousands and thousands of years of different civilizations and 12 different worlds with all their own, and it's like you can't do all that in your first book.
No.
It's great to have that, but you're going to have to keep drilling down until you have something that's more focused, but you can gesture towards those things in the architecture you draw, you know, or in maybe some of the warriors that you have, like a particular weapon or a helmet or something they have. And so that's kind of how I've just kept going, was like, what environment do I want to see them in? And so it's always, and I probably said this to you before, but it's always been like, I want to do a haunted house. I want to do a haunted house story. I want to do a jungle runner story. I want to do a hidden temple story. You know, in this, you know, last one, you know, they're on that I did the flashback to the Swan King. That was sort of a haunted house kind of cosmic underworld story, like it maybe even like a vampire story, you might say, with some of the creatures in there.
Yep.
And then in issue 7, they're on the Carrion Road, and it's just like almost like a Mad Max kind of desolate, you know,
Oh yeah.
you know, desolate adventure story. So it's the characters just kind of reacting to new environments and me finding a way to be there. There's rhyme and reason to the environments, but a lot of it is just like, I think this will look really cool. I think it'll be fun for people to see. It's like the stuff that I used to love about like Dragon Ball Z. Like, I don't know, just like flying to new planets, and there's just something new there, something interesting there to check out. With Samurex, have you, I mean, how are you kind of, I guess you could say, like restricting yourself in a way if you've got that much kind of built up around the book or in the world?
Well, I mean, part of it was restricted by like the base level story already existed before I completely formed all of this other stuff. So yeah, I mean, this first issue is the same, just like you were talking about with that first arc of Red Koi. You know, everything's like in the house. It's the house, and this is that same way. Like it's, you know, it's on that planet, and it's just like it's like one. It's really one scene. for the most part. There's a decent amount of building up to that scene, and that scene is the idea um of Samurex confronting the individual who's killed his mentor. And
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, I say mentor, but what we're really talking about is his father. It's the only individual, the only family he's ever known.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's discovered in a stasis device, and when he's brought out of it, he doesn't know who he is or how he came to be there. And so this bounty hunter raises him up as a bounty hunter, sees that he was made to be a hunter, and
So is he biological and like robot? Is he a cyborg? Is he?
so I use all these words, but like I mean, he's a little bit of both. He's like part man, part machine, but like he is an engineered being.
Hmm.
So like he's humanoid. He's very similar to human, but better.
Okay. All right.
So and something I don't even really dabble with it much at all in this issue, but I have this like concept of technology in um both technology and organics like connecting,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So like, you know, the fern in your living room is writing binary code just naturally. Like not but like as a bizarre example, like so there's these ideas spinning there that obviously will have to be explored, but if that helps explain what Samurex might be a little bit more. Um
Sure. In a
yeah, so
way.
like he's
So now
he's
I'm gonna
part
take a
machine,
second
but
look
he's
at that
part
fern in my
man.
living room.
What's that?
So now I'm gonna take a second look at that fern in my living room. So can you
Wow.
tell me a little bit more about um maybe like the planet Samurex is on, like what in terms of like this kind of like what's the culture there? What's the kingdom?
Sure. So I mean this planet he's gone to um is like this actually the system as a whole that he's in. Um there's there's like two or three planets. There's a moon, there's satellite stations, but it's like a business hub
Hmm.
for this galaxy spanning culture.
Mm.
So this planet he's going to is like it's like the Coruscant from Star Wars. It's like almost completely city, but it's old and it's been built up and whatever. But it turns out the guy he's looking for is hidden there. But the guy he's looking for used to be a bounty hunter. He's actually a legendary bounty hunter. It's known that he killed the mentor, but there's so much corruption in politics that no one's gonna do anything about it.
Hmm.
And so this story will set into motion the fact that Samurex, he's personally motivated by justice, but he's also been trained up in the ways of the bounty hunter clan of his mentor, to follow a code and believe in justice. And so when he brings this guy to justice, it's going to set in motion everything else that happens after it. Um, of
So
him.
did you read, I mean, is there like historical events that have influenced this or like geopolitics that's influenced it? Like you
Man,
take
nothing
any influence from that outside stuff?
nothing specific. I mean, I'm sure all of this stuff swirling in my head, and I mean, and I'm not sure if we even talked about this or not because people asked. I've been asked like, well, it was Red Koi an influence on Samurex? There's obviously some overlapping concept there, and initially no, but I think it was like subconsciously it had to have been there in my brain,
Sure.
and then I've gone all in on that because obviously, me, I love Red Koi and I love
Mm.
working on that with you. So when I was like, oh yeah, duh, of course it influenced me. Like, I go all in on that. And Yeah. So, dang it. What was the original
Well,
question?
it's
I'm
going to be a
sorry.
surprise to you when the last issue, Aiko rips off her face and she's a cyborg.
Oh,
So, spoiler
yes.
alert.
Spoiler
Full
alert.
circle.
I
No, I was thinking like just because if you're already thinking like, the political events, the corruption, things like that, or like how so you're talking about multiple, kingdoms or
yeah.
civilizations built on top of each other. I mean, have you already sketched that out? Like, what does that look like?
So yeah. So I mean, a little bit enough. I mean, as I mentioned, there's in this Samurex galaxy there was these 12 worlds, and there's actually a really good reason why these 12 worlds all became spacefaring at the same time. I'm not going to tell you that yet, but
Fair.
um yeah, so they came together, they operate as one galactic thing. And this is where it is similar to Star Wars, certainly, where they had the Galactic Senate, but
Hmm.
you also have like Tatooine that like nobody cares about, that's like out
Sure. Yeah.
there. So it's the same sort of thing. We go along, you'll see a lot of these just like little places and little people. But the idea is that the bounty hunter culture, they came up at the exact same time as these 12 worlds, and they
Mm.
were created to be um essentially created to be like Texas Rangers out
Oh,
there
sweet.
again in the old west. Like they were, they fight monsters, they right wrongs, they don't just bring bad guys in. Like that's the origins of the bounty hunters, and there was 12 clans, one from each planet. And so as the government and the bureaucracy and all of this stuff has grown, that stuff has dwindled. The
Hmm.
clans have split, and now it's the honor and the codes and all of the things have crumbled down. And so now you have this mysterious being that has been trained by the last bounty hunter from one of the original clans. He's obviously not 1,000 years old, but he's a descendant of this original clan. And
Hmm.
now this character is going to be like, nah, we're gonna seek out justice. We're gonna do what's right. So future stories can see him travel to these little places with these little people that have been ignored, that maybe they're under siege by bandits or criminals or an infestation of robot bugs, and he'll come to their aid, and like
Hmm.
he'll slowly become this infamous character of his own in this universe, as he slowly kind of sews back together the the beliefs that everything was built on originally.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a story for our time. And no, I mean, I really seriously, I mean, it does. There is that sense, I think, especially, now there is a real question of like, you know, I mean, there's always the questions like, what does it all mean and stuff like that. But I think there is a palpable sense of like, you know, what what are we doing? Like, why do we think the way we do, or think, have these categories of good and evil? Like, I think things have become so subjective and relativistic in a way where it's
Yeah.
like now we're actually being forced to ask like, well, why do we think the way we do? What's the historical background? Is there any way of getting that back? Um, I mean, I think you nailed it. So maybe
Sweet.
you're gonna
And
fix the problem.
I, what goes through my mind too is that like we are never at a loss for hero stories,
Mm,
like especially right now, like with in a time in history and in the society around us, we desperately need good hero stories. We need to talk about characters and people that live by codes and honor, and like that is a story that needs to be told.
and everyone knows it. That's the thing.
Mhm.
It's like you feel it in your. I keep hitting this microphone. You feel it in your bones when you're being, just kind of given something that's got an agenda, or it's been pasted together to just kind of like, it's like it's a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
except you can tell, you can see the
Mhm.
Greeks, and when you have a story that really plays into those kind of, you know, endless and timeless truths, it just feels better. It feels more natural.
Yeah.
You enjoy it.
Yep.
You know? It's good
Yeah.
strategy, Nick. I think it's gonna work.
Thanks. It all sounds good in my brain, but as I say this stuff out loud and I say it to you, I'm like, wow, this is going to be like 9,000 comic book issues, I guess,
It's
maybe.
gonna be
I don't
very
know.
That's a good problem to have,
That is a good problem.
frankly.
I'm not sure how I'm going to accomplish this, but it's going to be fun. Also, there will be lots of sword slashing, fighting action because
Oh boy,
that's
Because that's
fun.
fun too.
it is.
That's fun too.
You gotta have that in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, people can tell when, I don't know, you're just trying to like, I don't know, phone it in, or I don't know what the best explanation is, but if you're telling a true story, and if you're trying to follow it organically, and I mean, you're a storyteller, you know what you're doing, but I think that it's always, you can tell if it's being done honestly and with a true desire to, um, you know, to give people a good solid character to root for, rather than, kind of someone to paste all their opinions on.
The term that floats through my mind a lot is authenticity.
Mm,
That is, at the core of this project. Nick, not to put words in your mouth, but like what I hear when you talk about it is the desire to build an authentic character
mm.
that is trying to, communicate authentic truths to the audience, and you yourself are doing that in the most authentic way that you can.
Yeah, and I think, and obviously we talked about this the other night, but I mean, my goal is to, and to bring this back to something I said earlier, it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to make. But I'm making something that I would want to read. Like it's something I
Mhm.
would want to consume as a reader, as a viewer, as a buyer. And I think that's one of the most important things that about what you make. Like I think you have to make something you love. Like if you're not, I think you're in trouble. And I mean, I know Jason Brubaker, I mean, he's talked about the same thing. He talks about going to a comic book convention and going around the entire convention just looking for something new and exciting, and he really couldn't find it.
Mm.
And so that's what led him to make Remind originally and make his books was the fact that he went out there and he couldn't find what he was looking for, and so he put it into the world. And I, hopefully that'll come through in what I'm making.
Mm.
Time will tell. Um, I don't know if that's your same sentiment. I feel like I get that from you and from Red Koi, the love of what you're making. Certainly
Yeah,
goes through.
yeah. I mean, it was definitely a project that started with, what do I want to draw? Like, I never thought, you know, as a kid doing, with comic books, I always thought I would draw superheroes. Um, and it just, when I kept sitting down to draw, it kept being fantasy type stories, with a historical influence. So, rather than fight that and do something I didn't want to, I just kind of kept following that thread, and thankfully there were people that want to read it. But I think also, something that's in Red Koi and something that you're tapping into with Samurex, I mean, I don't care who you are. Like there is something, say in the son or the daughter that desires like the either the approval of the father, wants to honor the father, um, wants some kind of recognition from their father, or wants to, make sure that their father is respected. And it's like, even if someone has a father they don't particularly care for, it's like, well, that that's an imperfection that you want to have resolved because there's something that's missing there. And so Aiko's having that issue in Red Koi where she thought her father was this completely admirable man who he taught her everything that she knew, loved her. He was, he gave her everything that he could, but he also had this dark side that she didn't completely understand. And then what you're getting into is Samurex. I mean, I think especially the story of the son who has the honorable father. If you have the father who's stood by his word, who's lived by his code, who's given you his best, and is someone that you want to be like, well, I mean, I think that's the desire we all have, would be to have that father, to be that father. So, um, yeah, man, I think you're going into evergreen territory, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really when things kind of started to come together for me, um, on a higher level. Is the idea of that, I mean, there's not a biological relationship there, but it's really a father and son story.
Yeah.
Is not just a mentor. It really is his father. It's
Mhm.
the only, like I say, it's the only family he's ever had. And it's funny because in the past, when I've tried to create characters and I've tried to write like bios, like for some reason I thought that I wanted to be able to write I can't ever find a way to write like a description of a character. Like you can't do it without talking about where they come from.
Yeah.
You can't talk about where they came from without talking about their parents.
Yep.
Like, and that was like a profound realization for me
Yeah.
that like I was like, why can't I create a character that comes from nowhere? Wait, maybe this makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I think that just, and I mean that's something that resonates with everyone on a different level. But it's it will probably carry through greatly through the entirety of the story wherever it goes.
Well, and I think it taps into something as well, because like, so paternal love is definitely, it's obviously different than maternal love. With paternal love, there's so much more of the, you're usually doing something with your dad. It's not as much face-to-face communication, if any communication. It's a lot of times when you have those moments, you're working on a project, or he's teaching you something, and in this case he's given his craft to Samurex. And I think in terms of men, that's like the greatest thing we can give, and like it is the greatest honor that you could give your dad, to follow in his footsteps. You know what I mean? Like so those are, my dad worked in insurance, and then he was also a volunteer firefighter. And he asked me once, "Don't you want to be a fighter, Ty?" And I was like, "No, that's insane. I'm not gonna go into the fire. Are you nuts?" He was like, "All right," he was a good guy. But so I mean, yeah, man. I mean, there are layers to this that I don't know. I think it's very exciting.
So
There's a lot
one
of
more
different.
thing that I've thought about with that relationship, as we've talked off and on, Nick, is not only is that a paternal relationship, there's a unique dynamic to what I'm going to call an adoptive relationship too.
Mm,
And as Samurex continues to grow and develop and create his arc, or live his arc, I guess, there's a unique aspect to that. And I don't know what you guys have in terms of experience with adopted siblings or family members, or whatever. I've got some experience through my more distant family, and that's a really unique situation.
mm,
And there's a lot of things that come along with that, that question of identity.
yeah.
And Nick, I know that that's something that you have been thinking about with Samurex. And like I really like the idea that since Samurex doesn't exactly know what his origin is, there's that ability to explore identity, even though he has a father figure.
Yeah,
It's not just an open and shut case. It's more complex than that.
yeah, 100%. And that'll certainly be a theme going forward. Is the big theme will be identity, and who are you, and he's gonna encounter the Samurex will encounter people to be like, why are you like this? I mean, he's going to encounter nefarious individuals in this story that are like, hey, you're pretty cool. You can kill people. Come work for us. Why not? And there is a why not. There's a good reason why not. And yeah, why do you make those choices? And it's funny, Tyler, because you said the honorable father, but I mean, if I keep making stories, I mean, there's going to be some skeletons in the closet of the mentor, and those things will be there to be discovered. And how does the character deal with them, and how does that change Samurex, or change how he feels, or change what he does, and how is he made better in the end?
Yeah, that's the hard thing, is when you actually see your parents as like they're humans for the first time, rather than just like they're just sort of the objective authority for the however long. And then the first time you do see that vulnerable quality, it's disorienting in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, not even necessarily like things they do wrong, but you just said it. Vulnerability. Just the thought that, like, I mean, I remember getting to know my parents as an adult and realizing that they had no better clue what they were doing, raising me than I do raising my young kids, and that like there's no manual, there's no like you can talk about wisdom with age, but that's hard fought.
I know. And then you think like, well, I'm not going to make this particular mistake that my dad made. And it's like, maybe you do make that mistake, but maybe you don't. But then you also have to think, well, what did he do for me that his dad didn't do for him? And he said, well, I'm not going to make that mistake. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like you say, like there are layers to this. That's cool, man.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, not to give away too many of the plot points in the future, but I mean,
Talk about it. The people
I mean,
want it.
talking about talking about that identity, and talking about those relationships, and part of it is, I mean, yeah, his mentor Dax Corvus is, he's going to have skeletons in his closet, but the realization that there is nobody you can put on a pedestal. We're all flawed. We all make mistakes. We all do dumb things. And I mean, that's something that relates to me on a personal level in my life, coming to the realization that everyone is flawed, and
yeah, I mean, I don't know what that's like, but
great
I'm sure for you guys.
What's that?
I said, I don't know what that's like, but
well, and right along with that is the idea that you can be flawed but still be good.
Yeah.
You can have, to use Nick's term, you can have skeletons in your closet, but that doesn't necessarily make you an awful person. It depends on how you deal with them. And like even in moments of darkness, good characters still have the ability to show their underlying positive traits.
yeah, and I mean, maybe the most obvious fact, and Rex, you putting it this way, was that this is an adoptive relationship. I mean, something that characterizes adopt. I mean, from what I've heard from adoptive parents, something that characterizes that is that the child will inevitably have those questions of identity.
Yeah.
And it's inevitably a recognition that there's an imperfection here. Like, I should have my biological parents with me, but for whatever reason I don't. And the main difference with the adoptive parent is they're there with the child saying, yeah, that sucks, but I'm here. I'm here for you, and I'm going to be here with you. And that's something that no matter what this guy did, he's made that choice to take in Samurex and give him everything that he can.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's the interesting I mean, to bring up the whole adoptive thing, and again, I don't know a ton of adopted people very well personally, but I mean, you always know about folks that they're adopted and then they're trying to find their biological parents and stuff. They're struggling with those issues of being abandoned, but I feel like you don't always hear enough about the fact that there are parents that, unlike the children, I mean, you choose to have children, but you can also you choose a child when you adopt them. You
Hmm.
know, someone picked you,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
which is
Yeah.
an even greater thing. I feel like than being born to parents.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it really is. I
That
mean, there is a
idea that
proactive aspect.
you've been chosen.
Yeah.
You know, you have value. Someone has selected you.
Mhm.
That value is acknowledged.
And sometimes wrestled with.
Yeah.
Again, like, that there's a lot of complexity there, and to be simultaneously concerned that you are valueless to, a biological parent, or, however you want to frame that relationship, but at the same time be chosen and valuable to that adoptive parent is a really unique tension. And I mean, yeah, that again, this is from observation of individuals that have gone through that, and at times really struggled.
Mm.
But like, it's amazing to watch, and it makes for, again, a wonderful and relatable story, because everyone, regardless of your background, or what kind of home you grew up in, or whatever, everybody struggles with the idea of value.
Oh, sure.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no, I don't, I mean, I'm sure like sociopaths probably don't, but the typical person does. And so to be able to see a character go through that on a very specific scale because of that relationship that they have with their mentor, gives the reader an opportunity to compare that to their own, experience, and connect on that extra level.
Something I'm thinking also about Samurex is that what do you do when you recognize you do have value? You were created for a purpose to be a weapon, essentially. I mean,
Yeah,
how does how does a weapon, and Nick, correct me if I'm mischaracterizing the character, but it seems like if you're understanding like, oh, I'm bred to be some kind of very powerful destructive force, like it's like kind of like, I mean, it reminds me of Hellboy, and Mike
Yeah,
Mignola always laughed because in
yeah,
Hellboy just sort of sticks his head in the sand. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to know. I'm good.
yeah.
yeah,
I'll
You
fight.
could rebel against that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting and it's going to be fun. I got a lot of ideas about it.
Awesome,
So,
man.
and about who created him and why he's created and how he came to be where he's at. But then there's the fun dynamic of what would he have been if he was where he was originally supposed to be versus what he is now in what seems like a tragic situation is actually a greater result.
Mm.
But so yeah, so I pitched this as a world building stream, and I guess I meant that I didn't know, but I meant that as like a literally personally your personal world building and how your
All
parents
different scales.
may or may not have messed you up. But
And what a cool story to tell, though. Like,
Yeah.
especially when it's like laced in between scenes of like robotic samurai, you know, action,
Yeah.
explosion,
explosions.
Boom.
boom. So we're at an hour here. Tyler, do you want to direct folks anywhere to your? You want to direct them? I put your website in the
Yeah.
notes, but I mean, tell them where they can find Red Koi and to keep an eye on whatever.
Yeah, so Issues Red Koi can be found at alternacomics.com. You can pre-order issue 7 if you're already a Red Koi reader. It's up there, and the book should be coming soon. I don't know exactly when. And then my website, tylerwentland.com, if you want signed copies or if you want some original art through sketch cards or sketch covers, I'm happy to do that. And you can sign up for my newsletter, and that's where I'll just be posting updates about how the progress on the last book is coming and what I'm working on next. So thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it. Good conversation. And thanks, Rex. Good to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to meet you too.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on. I mean, this was a super fun conversation. Like, I just want to do it like twice a week, but I wish I could say that I have time to do it twice a week, but maybe once a month. Maybe we'll swing it somehow. But
Great.
If we keep talking about parents, it's going to turn into like a therapy session.
I know.
Yeah. Yes. No matter what I say, we talk about like parents and adoption and identity every time, no matter how I pitch the video.
And you're just drawing.
We're talking about
doing text bubbles.
Design, so long as you design your character as an orphan
That's
adopted by a bounty hunter.
That's right.
Which
Why
segues
wouldn't you do
into,
that?
if you are still watching at this point, Samurex is up on Indiegogo right now. We are in the final week over there. There is a special bounty pack which has got all kinds of extra goodies in it for sale up there right now. Definitely get in there. We are gonna shut that down on the date because the plan is to get things in motion, to get the books in before the end of the year, and hopefully get the books into everyone's hands by the end of the year. This is my amazing dream. So I'll shut it down on the 29th to make sure I can get funds in hand, to make sure that I can get things ordered, to make sure I can get them in hand. But of course, we will have a store open at the end that will have some limited fare or however that works. I don't even know yet. Maybe you know better than me if you're watching from home. But we'll be doing that, so definitely check that out.
Somebody tell him.
Somebody tell me what to do. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how I'm doing this shit.
I will accidentally tell you what to do, Nick. If I'm not careful, I will do it by accident.
I did calculate shipping and packaging and all of these things into the campaign, but at the same time, I don't know how to go from an Indiegogo campaign to a box going in the mail yet. So that'll be fun. We'll figure it out. But yeah, Tyler, thanks for coming by. It's great to see you, bud. I'm glad you're doing well. Stay in touch. We'll obviously stay in touch, and I can't wait to hear what's up next with Red Koi, and I can't wait to get my sausage fingers on some pages to lay some colors on. That would be fabulous.
You'll be the guy.
Yes. So thanks, Rex. Rex, of course, you can find Rex the Bean on Twitter, being super smart about stuff. So definitely check him out as well if you like super smart stuff.
Thank you very much, sir.
And with that, we will gonna shut her down. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Peace.
See you later. Peace.